questions. We have a couple of questions for the panelists, and I know we've stretched our time. We still have over 180 participants here. The first question is from lawyers. As you expect, this is a lawyers platform majority. Lawyers feel that a couple of the panelists have been bashing them, particularly Mr. Lauren Femi, that issues of arrests and the lawyers taking advantage, let me see the right words, that we're taking advantage of the arrest provisions in the law, and they need to address it. Leonard Silk here, Mr. Mike Ibokwe feels that we need to clarify that lawyers are not necessarily taking advantage of the system, but what steps are ship owners taking to prevent this? Because it's what they call the caveat against arrest. Mr. Andu, are you familiar with it, and it's something that your company uses for your vessels? Thank you, sir.
I'm very conversant with it, and I have used it in the past, but when you own a large number of vessels and paying for caveats for a fleet of 20 plus vessels is not exactly easy when you're being forced by your clients to cut costs.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. I just thought to mention that.
I'm very familiar with it. I'm very familiar with the regime.
Though, if you don't mind, Chairman SBL prerogative to ask a question.
Please go ahead, sir.
Thank you. It's a question. It's also an observation. So I think Emeka might be someone that can respond, and certainly anyone else on the panel may also respond, including even the moderators and maybe the chairman of the committee, Mrs. Agbo. But what I was going to say, broadly speaking, very, very broad, and I emphasize broadly speaking, is that sometimes the contracts that the indigenous operators enter into, and I'll use the term multinationals, again, I'm speaking broadly, tend to be lopsided. So oftentimes, the multinationals are able to take vessels off hire based on supposed force majeure or other reasons. And because it's a very small industry, oftentimes local operators are not inclined to take the multinationals to task. Indeed, even at the point of negotiating the charter parties, etc., they tend to accept covenants and provisions that ordinarily, in my view, are so lopsided that, but for the fact that they don't think they have leverage, in my view, don't make sense. So I wonder if someone could try and respond to that observation / question, if you will. Thank you.
Can I attempt something here, even though Mr. Andu may want to say something? Two things I want to quickly address. One is the issue as to whether lawyers are taking advantage of abusing the ship arrest process. While we might say that in some cases you can find that sort of thing occasionally, but this is a part of the ecosystem of the maritime sector, and there are all kinds of things that are going on, and it's a sector, the judicial sector, the legal sector also requires some measure of reform. And so where you have a vessel that's arrested off the bat because the law allows you to arrest a vessel ex parte, in other words, without notice to the other side, if we have judicial judges who are well-versed in maritime law, they would know, first off, that this is not an arrest that should be granted, whether with notice or no notice. And so that is part of the reform that, the Nigerian Maritime Law Association, we've actually recently set up an Admiralty Jurisdiction Reform Committee to look into some of these things and to see how we can advocate a better streamlining of the laws that deal with this, because we find that, and this is what we find, because in one breath we are saying we are abusing the ship arrest process. At the same time, it means that you may be taking food from the plates of some of these maritime lawyers. So, but the thing is, we should find a balance. If we act properly as lawyers, arrest when we should, and push back on releasing a vessel if the owner really is liable then we find that balance. But we also need the judicial authorities, the judiciary, to also rise up to the occasion and actually be well informed, well trained, and so that they are able to understand the technicalities of arresting a vessel or not. So those are one of the issues. And then in respect of what Mr. Adio was saying, these contracts, that is just the nature of the contracts. The IOCs always have the upper hand. And so what the counterparty, the contracting counterparty can do is just try to protect himself by, with insurances or clauses indemnifying himself and so on. Those are the only ways you can protect yourself. And at the end of the day, you want to remain in business. So what you want is not to go to court. What you want is to negotiate or go to arbitration and get a quick resolution of the matter, because that's just the nature of the business. If you have the upper hand, your bargaining power is going to be very low, and you can only protect yourself by either insuring or having clauses that will protect you as best you can. The important thing is not to get into a fight with the IOC as much as possible, because it will be difficult for you to overcome that. Thank you.
Well, to follow on what Mrs. Agbo said and what the chairperson said, I would like to put a spin and point this question at the DG of NIMASA, Dr. Jamo. Dr. Jamo, the chairperson of the SBL mentioned that the lopsided nature of the contracts between the IOCs and ship owners. I've also read in various forums, and I'm aware that the IOCs themselves have argued that they are willing to give longer tenure contracts. One, to address the issue of banks that they don't have the relevant tenure to match the commercial obligations, and also to deal with the tenure, the process which NAPIMS takes to issue these contracts to be shortened. Now, is it possible that NIMASA, working in concert with NCDMB, as the NCDMB has very wide powers, I've seen them really bring these IOCs down to their knees. Is this something that you're worth taking up, to having a conversation with them, that some of these contracts to ship owners should be reviewed and relevant law and contracts that allow them to remove them just for off-hire reasons, for flimsy reasons, be addressed, and also address the issue of having longer tenures? I don't know if it's something you're willing to touch upon and maybe take on your part of your policy, sir. Thank you.
I think that one is a very straightforward. It's something that the agency would like to intervene. Longer tenure contracts depend on the contract of the IOCs. Usually, in terms of cabotage, we do intervene, but it depends on the ship owner if he try to contact the NIMASA for them to intervene in such areas. But we are very willing. And of course, that's one of our own area of mediation. We must make sure that we allow the indigenous ship owners have a very favorable gains and contracts in terms of the tenure. So NIMASA and NCDMB will always liaise, especially with this our MOU, to deal with this situation. Thank you.
So thank you very much for that, DG. We have a number of questions. I don't know that we have enough time to go through any of those questions.
We have roughly 10 minutes now, if we can wrap it up.
We have 10 minutes. So we can also tell the panelists how much time they have, so they know they're not here forever.
Yes.
And basically, the good thing is that we never promised that we were going to solve these issues. All we said was we're going to look at the evolution, identify the challenges, and look at the opportunities of ship finance in Nigeria. So I guess this is a start. So the questions, who is curating the questions?
Okay, so there's a question for Mr. Emekandu. And the question is, you mentioned the residual value of the vessel. How can the residual value insurance help in ship financing to claim value for ship owners?
Basically, what do I mean by the residual value in the vessel? If you buy a vessel for, let's say, $10 million today, and it has a 5-year contract, in 5 years' time, that vessel may be worth $5 million, for instance. Let me just use that as a figure. So what that means is that if the vessel is worth $5 million, you actually can afford to be owed $2 million at the end of the 5-year period, because you still have good security. And the fact, and because you can invariably, like I said, vessels are commodities that can be traded as long as they're in class and well maintained and well run. So I think that it's critical that, and once you do that, you find that the values of the vessel, it never dies. When we got into shipping, for instance, we bought the first set of vessels we bought. One of them was aged 24 years, was 24 years old. We bought it and we worked it for another 4 or 5 years before we sold it to somebody else who continued working it after we sold it. So it just shows you that the life of those vessels is over and beyond the narrow period when the banks are lending money. So it's important. So, but it takes the banks to have an understanding of those residuals and their trends for you to lend against them. Because as with everything, it's an estimate. So you could either get it right or you get it wrong. But that's risk. Everybody takes a risk. Even the fact that you get up and leave your house, even the fact that you stay in your house is a risk, because if you stay in your house, you become sedentary and you could get a heart attack. It's a risk you take. So life is about risk and managing the risk that life throws at you. So I think there's nothing wrong with, that's why I say that it's important that the banks understand, dimension their risks properly. Like I said, I mean, 8 years ago, maybe, okay, 10 years ago, we were able to raise money because we convinced our bank that we were building a set of vessels and that those vessels would have a life after the 5-year contract. And like I said, this is almost like 10 years of the vessel, and they're still working. And the banker that lent us the money is still seeing the cash flows. So it's important for banks to understand that the fact that somebody has a 2-year contract does not mean that he's going to go out of business after 2 years. Like Jeremy says, what banks are lending, and it's the cash flows of the vessel. So the banks need to have a better understanding of what are the cash flow dynamics that the vessel would face. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next question quickly is for Sir Peter Olorunfemi. Sir Peter, how do you see insurance companies in Nigeria supporting the shipping industry? Because one important element you need to have in ship financing operation of vessels is insurance. Do our insurance companies even understand what it is? And in your own experience, Jeremy, I'm going to put a flip on this question for you to answer. What kind of insurance do you normally look at? For instance, I know that the ship registry in Nigeria might ask you for P&I insurance to register a vessel or hull and machinery. Which do you think is important for purposes of registration and financing? So, Sir Peter, first of all, how do you think Nigerian insurance companies can aid the shipping industry? And Jeremy, which type of ship insurance are you normally seeing your financing? Is it P&I you pay attention more to, or is it hull and machinery? Thank you.
Yeah, I would say that Nigerian insurance companies, they've been doing well in terms of insuring vessels. They are up to the task because they can do reinsurance with international insurance companies. So that is no problem. And most banks take them. Also, the P&I is very, very important. And some banks and Nigerian insurance are also involved in P&I. P&I is good because it protects everybody and makes life easier. So the two goes hand in hand. And the banks also, they take into importance the insurance companies that they use. So we make sure they check the insurance company that they are good and they will see what they've been doing and that they are ready to meet repayment. But what is also important is for banks to ensure that the premium is paid as and when due. Because it's one thing that we insure a 5-year loan, and then after 2 years, the insurance premium is not properly paid. If this occurs, it creates problems. So that is also important. The lender must be involved. And maybe I will not have another opportunity. What we've been discussing all through can easily be sorted out by having a bank that is a maritime bank easily. Once you have a maritime bank, they will make sure that they have insurance they will be using. They make sure that they have the commercial banks they will be using. They make sure that the business is available. And I think as the matter is planning to use the CVFF money, they should consider, can they take a percentage of it to start a maritime bank? Starting a maritime bank and putting it under a merchant bank does not take much time to establish. And it will allow what I think Emeka has mentioned earlier, that once you have little money and you have a strength, you can easily get international, you can guarantee and get more money. It's the guarantee that is important. It's not even the cash that is important to anybody. Once there is a guarantee that the money will be paid as and when due, the international community are going to give him money. Thank you.
Okay, so following up with your question to me, Ade, we and banks will not lend unless both hull and machinery and P&I insurance cover is in place. They are both of critical importance. The hull and machinery cover in effect underpins your security. If your asset is lost, then you are looking to the proceeds of that insurance to pay down your loan. Ships are movable assets. Things happen to ships. They bump into other ships, cause incidents, and hence P&I cover is very, very important. This is why banks and lenders take an assignment of those underlying insurances and will be lost payee on the relevant policies. But banks don't simply rely on that. What we all do is take out what are called contingent insurances. These are insurances that we place in our own name, and they will perform if there is a problem or a vitiation of the underlying insurance policies, both hull and machinery and P&I.
Thank you very much. That's very, very useful. Quickly, Mr. Ene, there's a question here from my president of the Nigerian Maritime Law Association that, can you please give, that's the person of Mr. Chidi Logo, he's asking for the benefit of anybody looking to enter the market. What are the advantages that are there for anyone coming into the industry? Also, there's another question I just threw at you quickly. I'll just read it out. So financing and vessel acquisition is one thing. Financing operations and long-term survival is quite another. Current COVID-19 realities are similar to the last global economic meltdown. Lower revenues, lost contracts, heightened costs. Jack Ma says we should strive to stay alive till next year. Any financing availability to survive till then, restructuring, extended tenors, moratoria, low interest rates. So the bottom line is that, how can we survive for the next 12 months? And what do you see your bank or your colleagues should be looking at for supporters? I won't mention the person, but thank you.
Okay, thank you. So there are opportunities in the Nigerian oil and gas industry, and those opportunities exist because of the cabotage, because of the local content. These are two powerful initiatives of the federal government of Nigeria to bring capacity and opportunities for the operators in this business. So with these two initiatives, there's a whole lot operators can use. All they need to do is to get themselves ready and make sure that they have a very beautiful business plan, set up a structured business, and they just take it gradually. In 5 to 10 years, they're going to build a world-class maritime business. So that's number one. On the other question, if there's a free money for post-COVID, yes, I can say that is possible, but that's going to come from the Federal Republic of Nigeria to support the industry. That's what we're talking about. They need to set up intervention funds. Yes, they have set up funds to help the medical industry. They can as well set up funds to help the maritime industry, knowing fully well the importance of this industry to the economy. Nothing would move if this industry is dead. It is very, very key to supporting and sustaining this industry. So I think it's an industry that we should all take very seriously. It's an industry government should look into and address all the policies issues so that they can bring in more operators, and banks are looking for opportunities to lend money. And once they can see that the cash flow is justified, they will lend money to support this industry. Thank you very well.
Well, I think on that note, I think Patrick you almost rounded up everything for us very neatly there. And as I said, we didn't come here to say that we can solve the problems, but I think the important thing is that the total sum of experience and knowledge here, I think, would certainly be a driving force for moving to where we actually want to be. And I want to use this opportunity now to thank once again the Director General, Nigeria Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, in the person of Dr. Bashir Yusuf Jamo, for taking the time. You know, I know you're extremely busy, so we really, really appreciate that you were able to join us today for the full almost 2 hours. I was almost jumping, thinking that you may have to leave, but I'm grateful that you're able to stay on, because we had promised 1 hour and 30 minutes. We should have actually closed about 20 minutes ago. But we really, really thank you. And I hope that when we call on you again, and we shall, because we are on this journey together, that you will heed our call. Thank you very, very much indeed, DG.
I was saying that we really appreciate you, Funke SAN. You did a lot of job for us, and you have just tried to simplify our work, as Mr. Emeka Ndu mentioned. He's part of my committee.
Correct.
Many of the points raised here is going to be used in terms of improving the quality of input of our own CBFF guideline amendment. So I thank you very much, most sincerely, on behalf of the agency and the nation in general. Thank you very much. It's very good initiative. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. And of course, the time of all the other panelists is no less important. I want to thank Sir Peter Olorunfemi. You are one of the doyens of that particular industry. We've known you for a very long time in this matter, and we are glad that you're still with us, because we will always take the benefit of the wealth of your wisdom and knowledge and experience, especially in the Nigerian space. May I also thank Mr. Emeka Ndu, the ship owner that is with us. And I think, Mr. Emeka, I would like to know your bank, who is really working with you at this rate, so I can tell my clients, so I can make some money as well, because we are all sleeping.
I don't mind providing references, but the bank has to pay me.
I know. Don't worry, we all get paid. That's the idea. So thank you very much, Emeka, for joining us.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
We really appreciate the wealth of experience, and it has been very helpful to all of us. Let me also thank Patrick Ene. You're here with us. So I'm sure you'll be seeing more of us from time to time now that we know what desk you sit on. Thank you for your time, and thank you for the benefits of your experience and knowledge in this sector.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It's my pleasure.
And Jeremy, very nice to have you with us. Thank you. You are not in, I think in the UK, you are out of lockdown. We are also out of lockdown. We are trying to ease into a new normalcy. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. We learned quite a few new things that we didn't know, and I'm sure that some of us will be reaching out to you in the near future, considering we still have a lot of work to do all together. Thank you very much indeed. Let me say thank you. You're welcome. Let me say thank you to my chairman, Mr. Sheni Adio, who has been with us all through. I hope you are still here. Okay.
I am.
Okay, great. So thank you for joining us and spending the time with us. We really appreciate it.
No, well, all I just say, I have nothing to add, but who's going to thank you? I think the DG has done a wonderful job thanking you, Mrs. Agbo. Yes, I think he has. I also, like you said, all our panelists are very important. I too have had the privilege of working with a few of them, particularly Sir, many years ago. But also, I too want to join and join in for accepting your invitation, our invitation, and for staying throughout the entire webinar. I think that is very instructive because it goes to show that he is a real partner in this journey. So I too join in thanking him for accepting the invitation and staying throughout the program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I also want to thank my very able moderators, Adedoyin Afun of Bloomfield Law Practice, who is also our second vice chairman of our committee, and Kashimana Sumba, also she's of Foundation Chambers, and she is the secretary of the Maritime Committee. Our other committee members I've mentioned, they are all somewhere behind, working towards making sure that this webinar goes live and is successful. Ezine, I see you as well. Thank you very much. So thank you very much indeed. And I think that we can close the webinar now. Thank you so much.